Beyond the realm of the pharaohs, where the great Nile River etched its course through formidable granite barriers and vast golden deserts unfurled towards distant mountain ranges, lay a territory destined to both challenge and forge kings. The ancient Hellenes referred to this land as Ethiopia, signifying those with burnt faces. Within the Nile Delta, its people knew it by the name Tereti, meaning land of the bow, a testament to the formidable prowess of its archers. However, its most authentic designation, deeply rooted in its very essence, was Kush. This single word would resonate with power across the ancient world for an astonishing 3,000 years. Here, the character of the Nile itself underwent a transformation. 6 formidable granite cataracts compelled the mighty river into tumultuous rapids, each a roaring symphony of white spray and smooth stone. These natural defenses served a dual purpose. They were both obstacles and opportunities. Merchants laden with precious commodities traversing the routes between the African interior and Mediterranean markets endured perilous overland portages. Conversely, dominion over these critical passages granted control over the very currents of commerce. The eastern hills shimmered with deposits of precious metals. The regions of Wadi Aki and Wadi Gabga harbored veins of wealth that rulers from the north coveted for countless generations. Abundant copper reserves provided the essential material for tools and weaponry. Vast quantities of iron ore lay dormant, awaiting future leaps in the technological advancement. This geological treasure trove would become the financial engine for kingdoms and the catalyst for conflicts that spanned the ancient world. The earliest inhabitants possessed a profound understanding of their land's inherent duality. By 3,500 years before the Common Era, a collection of distinct communities had cultivated sophisticated pottery traditions and intricate burial customs, reflecting a developing social stratification. The emergence of red and black ceramics from local kilns, adorned with geometric designs, would exert a considerable influence on artistic conventions throughout the entire Nile Valley. In the graves of the elite, imported northern artifacts appeared alongside domestically produced items, providing tangible evidence of commercial connections that predated the establishment of any organized state to the north. The unification under the initial dynasties, occurring around 3,100 years before the Common Era, profoundly altered the southern frontier. Early monarchs initiated expeditions that ventured beyond the First Cataract in pursuit of valuable resources, ivory and rare fauna. Local communities found themselves caught in a complex interplay of opportunity and threat as northern dominion steadily advanced southward. Some chieftains readily embraced foreign goods, gradually assimilating customs from the north. Others sought refuge deeper within the desert or fortified their settlements against encroaching forces. The Sea Group civilization, flourishing between 2,300 and 1,550 years before the Common Era, represented a more advanced adaptation to these evolving pressures. These pastoralist peoples developed exceptional metallurgical skills, crafting bronze implements and blades that rivaled the finest northern workmanship. Their pottery reached remarkable artistic heights, with vessels possessing paper-thin walls meticulously decorated in intricate red, white, and black patterns. Ritual containers were frequently fashioned into the likeness of animals, underscoring the paramount importance of livestock within their societal structure. However, the most astonishing development materialized around the settlement situated at the Third Cataract. Here, local chieftains embarked on the construction of monumental structures that dwarfed any previous achievements in their homeland. The Eastern Dufa, a colossal mud brick edifice soaring over 18 meters above the surrounding plain, dominated the landscape like an artificial mountain. This architectural marvel necessitated an unprecedented level of organizational capacity. Thousands of laborers meticulously shaped millions of mud bricks, arranging them in carefully orchestrated courses. The completed structure served a multitude of purposes. It functioned as a sacred center, an administrative hub, and a potent symbol of royal authority. Its imposing presence conveyed a clear message to every approaching traveler. They had entered the domain of a kingdom capable of extraordinary feats. The Western Dufa, erected centuries later, housed workshops where artisans produced luxury items on an industrial scale, catering to both domestic and foreign markets, consumption, and international trade. the city's rulers surrounded themselves with tangible markers of their escalating dominance. Royal interment sites yielded beds adorned with intricate ivory and ebony inlays, exquisite precious metal jewelry, showcasing advanced metalworking techniques, and weaponry, including bronze daggers with elaborately crafted handles. The practice of human sacrifice during royal funerals served as stark evidence of the absolute authority these monarchs wielded. Upon a ruler's demise, hundreds of loyal retainers accompanied him into the eternal realm, guards assuming their positions around the burial chamber, and servants arranging themselves in death as they had in life. Commercial networks centered upon this third cataract kingdom extended in every conceivable direction. Caravans journeyed southward into the heart of the African continent, returning laden with ivory, ebony, ostrich plumes, and exotic creatures. Eastern routes connected with Red Sea ports, facilitating the arrival of goods from Arabia and India for subsequent redistribution northward. Despite intermittent periods of conflict, commercial relationships thrived, driven by the unyielding northern appetite for southern treasures. This influx of wealth fueled technological advancements that bestowed upon the kingdom a distinct military advantage. Local archers developed composite bows of exceptional strength and accuracy. These formidable weapons, constructed from select woods and reinforced with sinew and horn, could propel arrows through northern armor at ranges that rendered chariots obsolete. Foreign chronicles acknowledged this superiority with a grudging respect, characterizing the land as Teredi, the realm of the bow. Bronzework reached its zenith within the royal workshops. Master metallurgists produced blades, tools, and artistic objects that demonstrated unparalleled technical mastery. Bronze mirrors captured and reflected light as if holding concentrated sunlight. Ceremonial vessels bore elaborate decorative motifs, skillfully blending northern influences with distinctly indigenous traditions. The urban nucleus sustained tens of thousands of inhabitants through innovative irrigation systems, ingeniously adapted to the Nile's capricious behavior near the cataracts. As the southern kingdom's influence expanded, a remarkable sovereign emerged, poised to irrevocably alter the trajectory of regional politics. The predecessor to King Espelter, known to history only through fragmented inscriptions, initiated the first systematic military campaigns against the progressively weakening Middle Kingdom. His bronze-tipped spears pierced through the disciplined ranks of northern infantry, who had never before encountered such coordinated archery volleys. Village after village succumbed as his forces advanced northward, their composite bows decimating defenders before they could engage in close-quarters combat. The king's personal retinue comprised 300 elite archers, each man capable of piercing a copper shield with an arrow from 50 paces. These warriors were clad in leather armor, reinforced with bronze plates, and wielded curved swords forged in the royal ateliers. Their commander, a colossal figure whose scarred visage narrated tales of countless battles, had earned his esteemed position by single-handedly defending a caravan against 24 brigands in the eastern desert. Diplomatic relations fluctuated between cooperation and confrontation as the southern sphere of influence broadened. During the Middle Kingdom era, northern rulers attempted to assert direct control through military incursions and the establishment of formidable stone fortresses at strategic locations. However, the leaders of the Third Cataract Kingdom proved to be remarkably resilient adversaries. When garrisons obstructed trade routes, local monarchs ingeniously devised alternative pathways. When tribute demands were levied, they countered with strategic diplomatic marriages and defense pacts that preserved their autonomy while sustaining lucrative trade relationships. The dissolution of centralized authority around 1650 years before the Common Era presented an unparalleled opportunity. As northern power fractured during the Second Intermediate Period, southern armies pressed beyond their established boundaries. Archaeological findings reveal the presence of indigenous cultural artifacts extending far north of the First Cataract, strongly indicating that the kingdom's influence penetrated deeply into the upper regions. The most dramatic moment transpired during the reign of a monarch whose name has been lost to the annals of time, yet whose accomplishments continue to echo through the ages. His invasion force, consisting of 10,000 warriors, 8,000 archers, and 2,000 spearmen, sailed northward aboard a fleet of warships, each capable of carrying 50 combatants. The prows of these vessels were intricately carved with the likeness of lions, and their hulls were painted in the royal colors of red and black. Drummers aboard each ship beat out rhythms that synchronized the oarsmen's strokes and instilled profound dread in the hearts of the enemy. Upon the fleet's arrival at Thebes, the spiritual nucleus of northern civilization, the city's defenders found themselves confronted by an unprecedented threat. Local garrison troops, accustomed to confronting bandits and raiders, were arrayed against disciplined formations of professional soldiers whose archery skills had been honed through generations of warfare. The siege endured for 3 months. Each dawn brought renewed barrages of arrows that cleared the ramparts of defenders. Each night witnessed stealthy infiltrations that neutralized sentinels and opened gateways. The final assault commenced at sunrise on the celebratory feast of a moon. Southern warriors surged through breached fortifications, their archers providing suppressing fire from captured battlements. The governor's palace capitulated within hours. For the first time in centuries, foreign conquerors held sway within the very chambers where the most revered monarchs had once presided. Scribes meticulously documented this remarkable reversal in hieroglyphic inscriptions that heralded a new epoch. The so-called barbarian kingdom had not only successfully resisted northern subjugation, but had, in fact, reversed the established order, conquering the conquerors within their own ancestral heartland. The southern sovereign established his court within the ancient palace, yet he governed with exceptional wisdom. Rather than dismantling local temples, he initiated their restoration. Instead of massacring the priestly class, he proclaimed himself the chosen champion of Amun. Local dignitaries who pledged allegiance retained their estates. Merchants who embraced the new political order found their enterprises protected. This pragmatic approach effectively transmuted military conquest into enduring political integration. For a generation, southern kings governed northern territories, employing a judicious blend of military might and cultural sensitivity. Royal workshops produced ceremonial artifacts that artfully combined northern techniques with indigenous aesthetics. Temple reliefs depicted monarchs adorned in both northern and southern regalia, emphasizing their dual role as inheritors of ancient traditions and staunch defenders of regional sovereignty. Religious syncretism flourished, with northern deities finding honored places within southern temples, alongside their traditional counterparts. Amun, the preeminent deity of Thebes, assumed particular significance in the royal ideology. International relationships extended far beyond the confines of the Nile Valley. Commercial ties reached as far as Mesopotamian cities, where local treasures commanded premium valuations. Diplomatic correspondence unearthed from ancient archives reveals that the kingdom's rulers maintained consistent communication with leaders throughout the ancient Near East, facilitating the exchange of technological innovations and luxury goods while concurrently enhancing their international standing. However, this era of prosperity harbored the seeds of future challenges. The very success that elevated the southern kingdom above its neighbors attracted the keen attention of resurgent northern dynasties. As the Second Intermediate Period drew to a close and unified authority reasserted itself under the 18th dynasty, the Third Cataract realm found itself confronting adversaries possessing superior numbers. These forces were equipped with advanced military technology and driven by an unyielding resolve to reassert control over the lucrative treasure mines. The ultimate confrontation would irrevocably reshape the entire region's geopolitical configuration. Nevertheless, the cultural achievements, technological innovations, and political concepts that emerged during this remarkable ascent would transcend military defeat, profoundly influencing the subsequent chapter of Southern history. The kingdom that had, albeit briefly, conquered northern lands would, in time, produce its own rulers who would assert their claim to the ancient throne, carrying forward the enduring traditions forged within the workshops and sacred precincts of the great city by the rapids. As independence began to wane around 1500 years before the Common Era, the groundwork was laid for an even more extraordinary future. The flow of treasure would persist, the archers would maintain their deadly marksmanship, and the aspiration for southern greatness would endure through centuries of foreign dominion, eventually culminating in triumphant ascendancy when black monarchs would rule from Memphis to Meroe. The morning sun cast elongated shadows across the Third Cataract as Thutmose's warships emerged from the river's mist. 50 vessels strong, their bronze-reinforced prows gleamed like formidable spear points. The fleet carried 8,000 seasoned veterans who had already conquered the Levant and subdued rebellious Syrian princes. Standing at the forefront of the flagship was the pharaoh himself, his golden uraeus serpent glinting in the dawn light as he gazed upon the formidable walls of the great city that had dared to assert dominion over his ancestors' sacred Thebes. The siege persisted for 47 days. Wave after wave of infantry stormed the mud-brick ramparts, while skilled engineers weakened the foundations using picks and fire. The defenders fought with desperate bravery, their composite bows unleashing clouds of arrows into the advancing formations. However, sheer numbers ultimately proved decisive when the gates finally splintered under the relentless assault of battering rams. Soldiers from the Delta poured through the breach with the ferocity of avenging warriors, reclaiming honor lost over a generation of humiliation. The ensuing sack marked the definitive end of an era. Workshops that had produced masterpieces for 5 centuries were consumed by flames. The great dufas, potent symbols of independent monarchy, were plundered of their treasures and left to decay. Thousands of captives shuffled northward in chains. Artisans destined for labor camps, nobles assigned to temple service, and children who would grow up knowing only the hieroglyphic script. Yet, Thutmose demonstrated a cunning strategy beyond mere terror. Having shattered Kerma's military might, he initiated a systematic transformation of the entire territory into a model colonial province. Where fire had ravaged, construction crews diligently rebuilt according to Memphis's specifications. Where indigenous customs had flourished, administrative reforms imposed the standards prevalent in the Nile Valley. The land situated between the cataracts would transition from mere conquered territory to an integral component of the burgeoning empire. The pharaoh appointed his own son as viceroy of Kush, establishing an office that would endure for 5 centuries. This royal scion commanded absolute authority over all territories south of Elephantine, overseeing garrisons, construction projects, mining operations, and trade networks. From his fortress palace at Nubia, the viceroy could deploy troops to any troubled zone within a fortnight's march. Fortified stronghold construction commenced immediately. At Buhan, strategically positioned on an island near the Second Cataract, engineers erected walls reaching 12 meters in height and 3 meters in thickness. The completed installation housed 500 men along with their families, establishing a permanent settlement loyal to pharaonic authority. Similar outposts sprang up at Semna, Kuma, and a dozen other vital locations, each diligently controlling river traffic through its designated waterway section. Merchant vessels were required to pay tolls, while supply convoys moved unimpeded. Rebels found no sanctuary. The gold mines felt the most stringent application of occupation. Where Kushite chiefs had once organized seasonal expeditions to the eastern hills, permanent work camps now operated year-round under strict military supervision. Thousands of prisoners, including captured soldiers, condemned criminals, and tribute levies from subjugated tribes, toiled within subterranean galleries that honeycombed the mineral-rich ridges. Archaeological evidence suggests some excavations descended to depths of 60 meters, their tunnels reinforced with timber frameworks and ventilated through ingeniously designed shaft systems. A typical mining encampment accommodated 3,000 laborers housed in stone barracks arranged around a central parade ground. Guard quarters occupied the highest elevations, their watchtowers providing clear fields of fire across the entire installation. Beyond the fortifications, processing facilities efficiently crushed ore and separated precious metals using techniques perfected in the Delta workshops. Caravans of donkeys transported the refined product to river ports, where it joined the ceaseless stream of wealth flowing into the treasuries of Memphis. Yet, the process of cultural transformation proved considerably more intricate than military subjugation. The victors discovered that governing Nubia demanded more than mere administrative efficiency and garrisoned troops. Indigenous traditions held deep roots. Ancestral dialects persisted despite the official promotion of hieroglyphic literacy. Spiritual practices adapted rather than vanished, giving rise to hybrid forms that honored both pharaonic deities and ancestral spirits. The temple construction initiatives clearly illuminated this complexity. Most notably at Soleb, Amenhotep III erected a magnificent sanctuary dedicated to his own divine cult. However, Kushite masons incorporated decorative motifs that subtly echoed pre-conquest artistic conventions. At Sedinga, Queen Taya's mortuary complex utilized Southern labor crews who left graffiti in their native script alongside the official hieroglyphic inscriptions. These monumental structures proclaimed pharaonic might while inadvertently preserving vestiges of the conquered civilization. Educational policies designed to cultivate a compliant elite yielded unexpected outcomes. Young nobles hailing from prominent families journeyed north to Memphis and Thebes for scribal instruction. They mastered hieroglyphic writing, studied classical literature, and absorbed Egyptian religious concepts. Yet they also maintained vital connections with their homeland, returning as cultural conduits between two distinct worlds. Some underwent fervent conversion to pharaonic ideology, while others quietly nurtured the enduring memory of independence. Hui, who served as chief administrator during Tutankhamun's reign, exemplifies the inherent challenges of colonial governance. His tomb paintings depict tribute processions where Kushite chiefs present exotic animals, ingots of gold, and precious gemstones to their pharaonic overlord. Paradoxically, these same depictions reveal the affluence and inherent dignity of these ostensibly subordinate populations. Elephant tusks, towering above the bearers' heads, and leopard skins, preserved with meticulous care, gleam. Jewelry displays sophisticated artistry that rivaled the finest creations produced in northern workshops. The tribute system generated its own inherent contradictions. Annual assessments mandated specific quotas of gold, ivory, cattle, and exotic goods. Appointed administrators, whether Egyptian-born officials or co-opted Nubians, confronted the arduous task of extracting maximum wealth without jeopardizing the very productive capacity that generated it. Excessive demands invariably ignited revolts. Lenient collection practices invited accusations of corruption. The most successful governors learned to navigate these competing pressures through astute diplomatic skill and judicious application of force. Trade networks evolved rather than dissipated under occupation. Caravans continued to depart for the African interior, but now they transported pharaonic commodities alongside traditional items. Copper tools manufactured in Delta workshops found their way to villages situated 1,000 kilometers upstream. Grain sourced from northern farms provisioned mining camps that indigenous agriculture alone could not adequately supply. Seashells from the Red Sea adorned pottery produced in Kushite kilns, following Egyptian designs. Spiritual transformation proceeded through a process of synthesis rather than suppression. Amun, the preeminent deity of Thebes, found a revered place at Jebel Barkal, an isolated sandstone mountain that Nubian peoples had regarded as sacred for generations. The site's natural attributes, particularly a towering pinnacle that seemed to pierce the very sky, rendered it exceptionally suitable for the worship of a supreme deity. However, the divine entity who took residence there acquired distinctively Kushite characteristics that would profoundly shape subsequent developments. The Amun temple complex, over centuries, expanded to become the largest devotional installation located south of Thebes. Successive pharaohs added halls, courtyards, and auxiliary structures, transforming the original modest shrine into a sprawling holy city. Priests educated in Egyptian seminaries conducted daily rituals in accordance with established liturgical practices. Nonetheless, inscriptions reveal theological concepts that ingeniously blended mainstream doctrine with Nubian beliefs concerning divine kingship and cosmic order. As generations progressed, the occupation gradually transitioned from an external imposition to a process of cultural integration. Soldiers who had arrived as conquerors married Kushite women and raised bilingual children. Their progeny frequently joined garrison units, further solidifying the interwoven fabric of the two societies. Their daughters were initiated into temple service. Families involved in administration cultivated economic interests that linked their prosperity to stability rather than exploitative policies. The pottery unearthed provides particularly clear insight into this narrative. Early occupation levels predominantly showcase Egyptian ceramic styles, including burnished red vessels, bowls adorned with blue paintings, and storage jars that emulated Delta prototypes. Later periods, however, reveal increasing cultural blending. Nubian potters adopted northern glazing methods but applied them to their traditional vessel shapes. Egyptian forms began to incorporate Kushite decorative motifs. Entirely new styles emerged, belonging fully to neither tradition. Pharaoh Amenhotep II's military expeditions highlighted both the might and the constraints of Egyptian dominion. When uprisings occurred during the initial years of his rule, the pharaoh personally led retaliatory expeditions that devastated the territories of the rebels. His triumph, immortalized in stelae found at Amada, records the execution of 7 captured princes, 6 from the Levant and 1 from Kush. Their bodies were publicly displayed throughout the empire as a stark warning against future defiance. Nevertheless, these same campaigns underscored the profound integration of Nubia into Egyptian strategic planning. Kushite archers formed elite units within the Egyptian army. Prominent nobles commanded auxiliary forces that fought alongside regular troops from the Delta. The conquered had evolved into partners in further territorial expansion. Their skills and expertise were vital for maintaining the empire in an increasingly complex global landscape. The reign of Akhenaten ushered in a spiritual transformation that impacted Nubia as profoundly as it reshaped Egypt. When the unconventional pharaoh renounced traditional deities in favor of Aten worship, Kushite temples faced profound dilemmas. Some priests embraced the monotheistic doctrine, closing their sanctuaries to Amun and other ancient gods. Others maintained their worship in secret while outwardly conforming to the new mandates. A select few openly defied the decree, igniting violent confrontations with loyalist forces. At Gebel Barkal, the Amun priesthood chose outright resistance. They sealed the inner sanctuaries of the temple, concealing sacred objects and texts within subterranean chambers. When Akhenaten's agents arrived to enforce religious orthodoxy, they encountered empty halls and defiant priests who claimed divine sanction for their insubordination. The ensuing conflict resulted in extensive damage to the temple complex, but it also fostered an underground network of traditionalist clergy who would preserve orthodox doctrine through the ensuing years of religious upheaval. Tutankhamun's restoration brought renewed prosperity to Nubia. The young pharaoh generously allocated resources for temple reconstruction, particularly at sites associated with Amun worship, such as Gebel Barkal. Massive construction projects expanded the complex far beyond its original dimensions. Additional halls were built to accommodate enlarged priestly staffs. Expanded workshops produced ceremonial artifacts for increasingly elaborate rituals. The god, who had once been merely one among many deities, attained unprecedented prominence in Kushite religious life. However, this period of renewed integration coincided with the initial signs of Egyptian decline. The protracted wars with the Hittites consumed vast resources while yielding minimal strategic advantages. Nubian gold continued to flow northward, but increasing quantities were diverted to fund foreign military campaigns rather than domestic development. Garrison troops found themselves redeployed to the Levantine frontiers, leaving diminished forces to maintain order in regions that had grown accustomed to a substantial military presence. Appointed administrators consequently gained significantly greater autonomy as central oversight weakened. Viceroys, who had once regularly reported to Memphis, began making independent decisions, their authority limited more by practical considerations than by bureaucratic supervision. Provincial governors cultivated personal relationships with tribal chieftains, bypassing official channels. Military commanders recruited soldiers locally instead of relying on reinforcements that arrived sporadically, if at all. The reign of Ramesses II marked both the pinnacle and the commencement of the decline of Egyptian influence in Nubia. The prolific builder pharaoh expanded temple complexes throughout the territory, most notably at Abu Simbel, where colossal statues proclaimed his divine authority to all who traveled the river. These monumental structures necessitated unprecedented labor mobilization. Thousands of stonecutters, sculptors, and transport workers were drawn from communities already burdened by military conscription and tribute obligations. Yet, this same era witnessed the emergence of distinctly Kushite architectural styles that subtly challenged Egyptian aesthetic supremacy. Nubian masons developed proportional systems that resulted in buildings recognizably distinct from their northern counterparts. Indigenous sculptors crafted Egyptian-style imagery that emphasized divine authority, while incorporating facial features and artistic conventions reflecting homeland preferences.